Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. My name is Cliff Kane, and today we'll be breaking down the most important things to know about retail media. Before we dive in, I want to give a quick shout out to ESOMAR for hosting this event. Also, for those of you who may already have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Organizers will collect them and we'll make sure to address them during the follow-up. Once again, I'm Cliff Kane. With nearly 20 years in marketing research, I've been around long enough to witness two major digital advertising waves. First, the rise of search engine optimization, and second, the social media disruption. Now, I'm thrilled to be seeing the rise of retail media as well, but I'm even more excited to introduce Imtiaz Ahmed and pass the mic to him, as I'm sure he can introduce himself far better than I can. Imtiaz?
Thank you, Cliff. So Imtiaz Ahmed from Reckitt. I've been in the CPG industry for over 16 years now. I've had the pleasure of working in the Australian, UK, Dutch, and now the US markets over the last 16 years. And it's been a worldwide journey for me. When I started my career, retail media didn't actually exist. E-commerce didn't exist. And now we have all of these new capabilities that we need to deal with in order to find growth within the CPG industry. So my career starts in the sales side of the organization, dealing with customers like Woolworths and Coles back in Australia. Then I transitioned into e-commerce 6 years into my career because the only qualifications you needed at the time was to be good at PowerPoint and Excel. And then I found myself in the interesting world of direct-to-consumer e-commerce when it was a very sexy thing to do. I did that for about 5 years and then transitioned into performance media, which means retail media plus content marketing within the e-commerce context, which is what I've been doing for the last 3 years here in the US.
Thank you, Imtiaz. I can't wait for the audience to hear your deep dive into the data. But before we jump in, let's warm up with some key statistics. I think these will help illustrate the true power of retail media. Between 2019 and 2023, retail media experienced a staggering $126 billion in growth. And according to the World Advertising Research Center, it's expected to grow by another 10% this year alone. Today, there are 216 retail media networks globally, with major players like Amazon, Walmart, and Kroger leading the charge. Plus, 64% of executives at US retailers plan to implement a retail media network by the end of 2024. So, why are retail media networks so powerful? It's because they sit at the intersection of three major trends we're seeing today. First, the decline of third-party cookies and identifiers due to privacy concerns and the laws that followed. Second, the digitization of stores, which allows retailers to collect valuable first-party data. And third, the decline of traditional TV advertising. As marketers face a world without third-party identifiers and find that traditional advertising channels are losing reach, retail media offers a solution. They provide access to their own first-party data and their own advertising channels, whether that's on-site, off-site, or in-store. Imtiaz?
So what does retail media mean? Retail media is basically any type of media that you can activate through a retailer's platform. So the key players within this space in the US are Amazon, Walmart, Kroger, Instacart, but now almost every retailer, whether it be Home Depot or DoorDash, for example, everyone has some form of retail media play happening right now. So what makes up a retail media network and how does it actually work? So firstly, the thing about retail media networks and retailers in general is that they have transactional level data that as CPG companies, we've traditionally not had. We've never really had that purchase intent data or that actual purchase data to actually optimize against when it comes to media activation. So they have addressable customers or addressable audiences that are actually making purchase, and those transactions are being logged within the retail media systems, and then we can actually activate against that. So on top of that, when you sign up to a retailer's e-commerce site, you actually have to log in and opt in and give them permission to be advertised towards them. So essentially what that means is you've opted in for marketing. Now, for a CPG company to find a huge database of shoppers that have actually opted into marketing is quite hard Whereas, within a retailer ecosystem, you have these millions of consumers that have opted in for marketing, and they're doing things like searching for your brand. They are purchasing your brands and your competitor brands, all within a closed loop system where you can actually look at what you've activated and what you've activated from a media point of view, and then the transaction that happens off the back of that. So where it all started from a retail media point of view was paid search, and that's what we call within or on platform. So inside of that retail media or inside of that retailer's website. It's then moved into targeted display and video ads that both live within that retailer's website and then off that retailer's website across various other publisher networks. It's also transitioned into customer level insights for the more sophisticated retailers, where we're now combining loyalty data metrics with what is actually happening from a media point of view. And the really sophisticated retail media networks are involved in a thing called data clean rooms, which we're going to delve into later in this presentation. So retail media is effectively a new territory for not just for CPGs, but also for retailers. Essentially, it's a equation flip. We are now, as a CPG, I'm now the client and the retailer is the seller of media. So there is this really weird, not friction, but really weird dynamic when it comes to the relationship between the two parties. Secondly, there's not enough expertise in terms of retail media in the industry right now, because you have sales teams who are trying to negotiate retail media deals with retailers and they don't necessarily have any media experience. And then you have marketing teams who are trying to negotiate brand deals with or customer JVPs with retailers, and they don't necessarily have sales experience. Thirdly, the organizational structures within CPGs and or retailers aren't necessarily equipped to really gather and win when it comes to retail media. What I mean by that is CPG organizations are essentially very siloed in terms of who looks after what. And what you have with retail media is this through-the-line execution happening quite seamlessly across media, purchase, and acquisition. And that's not necessarily how the retailers work today. Fourthly, the source of funds is very blurry when it comes to where the money or who should fund this when it comes to a CPG. In some companies, that's being paid through trade. In other companies, it's being paid through media or through shopper. There's no consistency when it comes to who is actually paying for all of this activation. And finally, it's a very complex and non-linear state. Just like digital marketing made the customer journey extremely complicated, retail media has just made it even more complicated. So you have all of these digital media activation channels. You also have offline activation channels as well. They're all being parceled up into one thing that you can buy from a retailer, and you need to be able to navigate all of this complexity and still find growth. So all of this is new news for both us as CPGs as well as the retailers. And the people that are winning are essentially working out how do you partner with the right stakeholders across both sides of the equations, as well as third parties, to navigate for growth within the product categories that you're working on. So what are the principles within e-commerce that are reshaping brick and mortar? So essentially what we now have through retail media is levels of data that we've never had access to before. And let me give you a very important example. In an offline environment, when you have a shopper going to a physical shelf, you don't necessarily understand their intent. You can, look at what products that they're physically picking up off the shelf, but you don't necessarily understand the intent that they have in terms of what exactly they're purchasing for. Through retail media, what you now have is access, for example, to the search data that a consumer is actually typing into that search bar, identifying for you which product they're actually looking for or which category that they're actually wanting to buy for. If they make a transaction, then that would be a conversion and a successful thing that happened for your particular brand. But if they didn't make a purchase, that's a lost opportunity for the retailer and for all the brands that are playing within that category. What essentially is happening now is that we have this next level of granular data that can really show us what consumers are looking for and ensure that as we're designing offline assortments, as we're designing planograms, as we're designing promotional programs, we actually have what is required for the shopper at that, very granular detail, which we've never had access to before.
Thank you, Imtiaz. So what happens when you layer behavioral testing on top of all this? As Imtiaz mentioned, all this granular data helps you understand what is working and what isn't. The next crucial step is figuring out the why, so you can take the right actions to improve. For example, one of our studies on a replicated Amazon site, we discovered the importance of the Add to Cart button. Without this button next to an ad, especially for low investment FMCG products, shoppers are unlikely to click through to the product detail page. We also test in-store advertising assets, such as signage, end caps, displays, and point-of-sale materials. By testing these in context and using our proprietary in-house eye tracking that follows respondents' gaze, we gain insights and develop recommendations on how to adjust these assets, so they are seen, considered, and shopped. The ultimate goal, of course, is to use data and behavioral insights to understand what truly drives these results.
Within retail media, what actually works? The really exciting part of my job is to work with a new piece of technology called data clean rooms. So what a data clean room is a place where ad publishers, so think about ad publishers or retail media networks, think about Amazon, Walmart, and Kroger, are sharing their aggregated rather than their customer level data with advertisers while still exerting strict controls. So first party from the advertiser is then poured into the same place and to see how it is matched up against the brand's data. And from there, what you can actually do is start creating audiences that make sense for your brand and then activate against them accordingly. Now, data clean rooms are mainly used for three things. One is measurement, to look at how has my media effectively performed historically. It's used for media planning. So how, if I were to change my media mix, what would the impact potentially be? But the really exciting part for me is the activation piece. How do you hone in on the exact shoppers that are wanting to purchase your category and ensure that they purchase your brand over someone else? The example or the analogy that I like to draw is that data clean rooms are akin to a middle school dance. So you have your boys on one side of the gym, you have the girls on the other side of the gym. There's a heavily chaperoned interaction, temporary interaction between the two. And that's essentially the exchange of value and data that's happening between the two parties. And once that's done, you go back to your wall. So remember, who owns the gym isn't as important as who you're actually dancing with and what the actual music is. So in reality, it's an opportunity for both CPG companies as well as retailers to commingle data in a privacy compliant way and to find that value between multiple audiences to really hone in on who do we want to target from a media point of view. So what we've done at Reckitt is essentially take a lot of the data that we had from our CRM program. We've also looked at the data coming out of our DSP partners and the data coming out of our media buying platforms. We've extracted all of this information, poured it into a data clean room with a particular retailer, and started creating audiences on the fly. So previously, I would have to buy audience sizes of millions and millions, if not hundreds of thousands of people at the same time. Now, the audience granularity that I can actually get to is 2,000 identities at a time. So let's say I'm Huggies and my competitor is Pampers, and I go into the data clean room. I then write a query that searches for who are all of the people that searched the keyword Pampers in the last 30 days but did not purchase that category. I can essentially pull a list of the 300,000 shoppers that did that. From that, I can chunk those 300,000 shoppers into 2,000 identities at a time. I can run this media machine behind on top of that and serve them ads at whatever bid or frequency that I want. I can then determine which ones actually perform and which ones don't perform. I can scale my spend for the people that are actually converting, and deprioritize the ones that are not, and essentially grow my brand through media activation. All of this was not possible before we had the search signals that are apparent within a data clean room, but also it weren't really possible without activating through DSP. So essentially, we have all of this information available within a data clean room, where we're matching data with retailers, we're mining retailer data on top of that, we're using AI and machine learning to create these thousands of audiences at this micro-targeted level, and then perform all of this high-level, basically math from a media point of view, activate all of that in real time, learn from all of this stuff, put it back into the model, keep learning, and then keep pushing. So essentially, what required 10 or 20 different people to do all of this work now is essentially done by machines. So unlocking the power of retail media through data clean rooms is the way to go. But in essence, what you really need to have is the category sophistication of understanding what your shoppers are really looking for, how you can create the hypotheses to test all of these things, whether, if it's search that is quite critical to your brand, or if it's extending that lifetime value. Develop the creative to actually, prompt the users to take that next step that you want them to, set it live, learn, and then keep moving. Essentially, what AI and machine learning has enabled us to do is process enormous volumes of media and transactional data at scale. This transforms our data into insight, the insight into action, and that action into growth. There's all these cool things. Where do you actually start when it comes to retail media? Firstly, I would start with search. So within your product category, how does a consumer actually discover your brand or category? Determining what volume of that search is going to branded keywords or category keywords and your competitors' keywords, and then really understanding, what do I actually have to do? So if you're a market leading brand and there's only 2 or 3 other brands in your category and no one's necessarily investing in search, then do you really need to invest in search? Is it really important to do so? But if everybody's investing and they're taking that top shelf for specifically category keywords, I would say it's quite important for you to work out a bidding strategy that actually makes you own that top shelf for consumers that are buying that category for the first time. If you have a loyal set of users if you're market leading brand and you have a loyal set of users that are buying your products on a weekly basis, how do you opt them into something like subscribe and save using search as a medium to do so? Secondly, moving on to display. Display is amazing for trying to find new shoppers. Essentially, it's a way for you to use your RTBs, use your marketing claims to attract new shoppers to your brands and your categories, and get them to experience your brand for the first time. Video through display networks is also quite effective, and it's really important to stress and answer the search query or answer the problem that the consumer is actually putting into that search bar. So if somebody's typing in, diapers for the first time, what are those claims that we need to put in from a display point of view that's actually going to win that consumer over? That's what a retail media network essentially enables you to do.
Thank you, Imtiaz. I completely agree, especially about the importance of search. That's also where we begin when researching online category knowledge on any retailer site. But as we've mentioned, retail media channels are vast and interconnected. So if you're working on your retail media strategy and asking yourself questions such as, which campaign drives the greatest purchases for the category? What are the optimal assets for the campaign? What is the best store positioning for the campaign? Behavioral and context testing will provide you the answers. What I personally appreciate most about our framework is that it allows us to validate the impact of campaigns within targeted channels and compare them using our own unique KPIs. And with that, we'll wrap things up here. Thank you, Imtiaz, for being here and sharing your expertise with us. And a big thank you to everyone who joined us today. Your time and questions are greatly appreciated. Be sure to follow Imtiaz, EyeSee, and myself, Cliff Kane, on LinkedIn to stay up to date with the latest trends in marketing research. Until next time, take care.